Hello and welcome to this video. If you're still clicking through the Azure portal, creating your resources manually through clicks, you're doing it all wrong. In this video, we're going to look at how we're going to use infrastructure as code to deploy our code from DevOps to Azure. Now, in this example, we're going to use Microsoft. Of course, if you're using Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud or something else, they also have the ability to do this. Now you might think, why do I want to do this? Well, the whole idea is behind DevOps. People have really misunderstood the concept of DevOps. Nowadays we have DevOps engineers, which doesn't really make any sense because the whole idea behind DevOps was that the developers were going to start doing the operations also. So we didn't need these silos anymore. So that's why we invented the whole concept of infrastructure as code, because once you can spin up your infrastructure through code, developers can do it. Now, besides, of course, this being an easy way to spin up your infrastructure, it has a lot of power, because if you can script your infrastructure, that means you can also tear it down and spin it up whenever you want. It's easy to replicate every time, so you don't have to click and don't miss something. It's not like if you click through something, you can, for example, forget to set some kind of permissions or something like that. If it's scripted, it always happens the same way every single time. So without talking too much more, let's just get into it and show how this is set up. Okay, so let's start by going to our DevOps project settings. In here, we have something called service connections. And here I have created a service connection. All the service connection actually does is that it creates an app registration in my Azure tenant that can be assigned a role and some permissions. So if we go to my Azure, as you can see, it has created this app registration here. By default, it will give you the contributor role. And the contributor role is a long way okay, because what it allows you to do is, of course, create new resources and edit resources and delete resources. However, since we also want to be able to create permissions, so we can create managed identity. So that the idea is that in this case, we're going to spin up a service bus, and then we're going to spin up an Azure function. And the Azure function should have a managed identity permission to this service bus, and the contributor is not allowed to do that. So I had to, or you have to add manually this user access administrator role to your service connection. So that's what I've done here. This will allow me to create my managed identities. So if I go to this is my service bus. As you can see, it has created managed identities here with the permission set of data receiver and data sender. If we try to jump a little bit out, this is what it has created, my Bicep scripts in my pipelines, so my Azure function and my service bus. Now, as I said, if we try to go to our app registrations, all applications, this is actually what it has created. This is my service connection. So it's just like any other intra-application app registration. However, as you might see, it's not going to expire. So that's pretty much it for the Azure part. Let's look at how this has been created inside our pipelines. Now I'm going to quickly run through it, but for me, it's not really that necessary to understand everything here. And I'm going to share this on my GitHub repository, so you can look at it if you want. But for those of you who has watched my videos, also know that I am really embracing this AI to code things. So it's just to understand the structure really, and then let your AI actually make these. Because as I said, the good thing is this is all code. So our AI agents are pretty good at this. Anyway, I have an infra folder and modules. Inside my infra folder, I have a very simple YAML file. I'm running on an Ubuntu. Here I'm using what service connection I have created. what resource group it has to use, my subscription ID, and then we have an environment. And then it's pretty straightforward. I will use deploy Bicep because, as I said, I'm using Bicep for this. And it's going to run our different scripts, our Bicep scripts. If we look at our Bicep, our main Bicep, this is where it's going to target a resource group. And it's going to start creating our different things. So down here, it will create our role assignments, our data sender and data reader. And here it will deploy our function app, and here it will deploy our service bus. And these are the roles that I want to use. In here, I have what I want them to be called. And these are the biceps themselves for our function app. So this is what's going to create our function app. I'm setting it to .NET isolated. And it's going to be standard. Again, don't need to understand everything around here. It's just important to be able to read it. As you know, this is just code. And I'm running it as a version 10 for my .NET framework. This is where the roles are actually being assigned. And this is where I'm creating my service bus. And I'm using a standard tier for my service bus. So that's pretty much it there is to this. Now, let's try to create one from scratch. So let's just go out here and let's create a new project. Let's just call this YouTube demo. Let's just call it YouTube demo and infrastructure as code. And let's create that. So here we have a blank project. First thing, let's go to product settings. Let's go to our service connections and let's create a new service connection. I want it to be an Azure Resource Manager. Let's press next. So as you say, it automatically is going to suggest the identity type app registration and a workload identification federation. Here I will just sign in. Perfect. Let me choose this subscription. And here I will actually leave it to all resource groups. Now, of course, it does suggest you to choose a specific group, but I'm just going to leave it on all. And let's give it a name. So YouTube service connection. And leave everything else, and I will grant it access to all my pipelines. And let's save it. It has been set up. So if we go to our app registrations now, we've gotten a new one, as you can see. It's just been created. It will not expire. Now, as I said, it's not enough to give it the permissions as contributor. Anyway, if we try to refresh here, and we go to role assignments, you see now it has been created here with the contributor. But as I said, we needed to also have user access administrator. So let's just assign it. So first off, we need to copy the name. So let's go in here and we copy this name. And then we go into add, role assignment, privileged administrator role, user access, select members, paste it in there. We have there select. Let's press next. And let's take this one, which is recommend, and press next. And let's just review and create that. Perfect. Now our Azure is actually set up. If we then go back here to our pipelines, and let's just create an environment, call it dev. It's always a good idea to have these environments. Not that we're not really going to use them at this moment, but it's just always good to have like a dev prod and test to keep everything in line anyway. So now we have an empty repository here. Let's just initialize it. And let's clone it. And just to keep it simple, I'll clone it in my VS Code. And I'll place it somewhere. Let's just put it inside my repos here. Select that. And let's just open it. And you can see it's an empty repository. So that's what we expected. Now it's time to actually create something for this. Now you can use whatever CLI AI agent tool you want to use. You can use Visual Studio in here, right? Use the GitHub, or you can use, as you can see, I have both OpenCode, Anti-Gravity, Codex, GitHub Copilot, and Claude. I'm just going to use Claude, but they all work. So in the new session, and let me choose our folder. Let's trust. And just because I'm lazy, I'm going to set this on auto. And now it's actually time to start. Now I'm using Opus, but you could of course just use a Sonnet. This is not anything complicated. So let's start. We want to create a Azure function and an service bus that will be deployed using DevOps pipelines and biceps. The subscription ID is, so let's go and copy our subscription ID. Which is this one. So let's copy that. Subscription ID is that. Our service connection in DevOps is, so let's go here, away with you, product settings, service connections, and this is our service connection. So let's just copy that. The service, the Azure function should be able to, oh, should not be able to, should have data sender and data receiver. Should have data sender, data receiver on the service bus. This should be set up using managed identity. The Azure function should run .NET 10 isolated. Please also make resource group controlled by variables and all other decisions that needs to be made. Also create these as variables. We will run this in a dev environment. Okay, so just to sum up, with the prompt, we want to create an Azure function and service bus that will deploy using DevOps pipelines and Biceps. Description ID is that. Our service connection in DevOps is this one. The Azure function should have data center and data receiver on a service bus. This should be set up using managed identity. The Azure function should run .NET 10 isolated. Please also make resource groups controlled by variables and all other decisions that need to be make also these as variables. We run it in a dev environment. And I set that off. Now I'm just going to stop it here because I can see it seems like it's actually creating some code for our Azure function, and I don't want that. So let's just tell it I do not want any Azure function as such. I only want the infrastructure, so no code, just the container. And it's done. So let's see what is created. So this is our main biceps, our variables, modules, yeah, pipelines. Let's just set it to commit and push. And as you can see here, it also said that you have to remember that this one also needs both owner, either to be owner or needs the user access administrator. And that's what we set up, right? So that should be fine. And that's why we did it, because we are creating these managed identity assignments. Okay, and let's see. It has created a feature branch for us because it does not want to commit directly to main, which I guess is fine. And let's just complete that. Let's delete the branch afterwards. It's fine. And let's see what we have. So we have for our infrastructure. And what parameters? So this is where we would define our resource group and so on. Demo queue. It's going to use a standard. And we have this. Yeah. Anyway, let's just try to set it up and see if it works. So let's say pipeline, create a new pipeline. And we're using an existing. And we're using this one, the Azure pipeline, continue. And let's run it. And we need to grant this access. So let's permit that. Permit. And it says that it has deployed everything. So let's go and see if that is true. To our Azure, let's go to my resource groups. We have a new resource group, so that's correct. And in here we have an Azure function. We have a service bus. We actually also got application insights, so it's also got some monitoring, which is perfect. Some log analytics workspace also for a dashboard. So everything seems fine. So let's go in here and see if it also made the managed identity. Access user control, role assignments, and it has both a data receiver and a data sender. And let's just see if it actually cleaned up, because remember it tried to create something inside this one, which I did not want. So let's see if there are any functions. It's not, it's blank, but it's perfect. Let's go to our settings and let's go to configuration. And let's go to our stack settings. And it's running .NET 10 isolated. So everything works perfectly here. And actually, if you look at it, before I stopped this, I think it was running for like 5 minutes, and then I had to stop it, right? Because it was doing more than I wanted to, which was because I wasn't really good enough in my prompt, but it was an easy fix. And then this ran for what, like 2 minutes. So in 10 minutes, I got everything up and running for using my Claude here. And then, of course, the Azure part maybe also took like 10 minutes. So in 20 minutes, I had got a pipeline up and running which can deploy my infrastructure. So that was it for the demo. Let's just go back to the main. So you can see how powerful this is, how easy it is to set up. And once it's set up, I can keep rerunning it. So every time I want to change something, instead of going inside my Azure portal and changing it, it's very important that I actually change the script. And with AI, this is so easy. So this is where developers now actually have the power to control the infrastructure itself. Of course, you still have to understand some things, like what managed identity is and how what you need to use and how to set all of this up. But of course, if you are in doubt of any of this, remember my previous video series where I actually ran through many of these things like the service bus and so on, which is a good starting point. And then, of course, it's just using your personal favorite AI tool to make these scripts for you. And of course, read them. Don't just commit them directly. You have to understand what is actually going on, because no matter what, you're always responsible for the code you're going to deploy. Anyway, that was it for this video. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.